So this video, what we're gonna look at is taking an old fuel tank, which is full of gifts. There's more solid in here than liquid. We are gonna be changing this fuel tank, which is a replacement, and we're gonna make a module for a fuel injected unit fit inside this tank so that we have a good, reliable, replaceable pump. In the Corvair, the fuel tank sits like this. And so what I did is I actually got a module, I believe this is out of a Chevy truck, I'll have to check. I got this module, and the whole purpose of this is so that this car, reliability wise, this pump can be changed very easily. Even if this car sits for a long time and the pump gets all schmagged up, whatever, because it is a Resto-Mod, probably gonna be parked for periods of time. I'm probably gonna be putting a drain in the tank. But the real thing is when we start this kind of a project, we really want to plan ahead and look ahead at what we have to do. So this module, first of all, it's just Chevy module, and the fuel sender, there's a fuel sender that just gets stuck into here. So on another video, I'll show the wiring, but the original sender for this car is 0 to 90 ohms. This sender is a 40 to 250 ohm, I believe, sender, but we can buy a converter to convert that so that the gauge is actually accurate. And I'll do a video on how to put that in. Now, this tank is sitting in this direction. So what I'm gonna have to do is I'm gonna have to make it so that the sending unit actually works in here for the gauge level. So the problem that I have is if I put it in this area where the sender can go up and down in here, I have my fuel lines going into the interior of the car. This would be the actual interior of the car. So what I'm gonna see, and I don't know if I can do it, but I'm gonna pull this apart and I'm gonna see if I can rotate this top to have the fuel lines come over this edge so that I have a good place to route my fuel lines. As well, I know I need to cut this out so that it's lower. I'm going to put an access panel in the trunk of the car, so if there is a problem with the fuel pump, it can be accessed without dropping the tank. In this car, it's actually, you have to drop the sway bar, and yeah, anyway, it's just a pain having to drop tank. As well, the original sender and pickup went into here, so this is gonna get a patch welded in. We will make it look like it never was there. Could be a spot where I put a drain. And yeah, so then as well, if we look, we want this sender to be straight up and down, and we may have to put a bit of a sump in here. And I've already checked in the car, there is room. So what I mean by a bit of a sump is if I have this fuel pump mechanism, the tank is sitting in the car like this, and if I have this fuel pump mechanism in a spot right here, I'm gonna have to modify the top of the tank, but the bottom of the tank, where this lands, because this is at an angle, is actually into this area. So there's a lot of room in here underneath the car. We're probably gonna have to put a bump into this tank to make it fit. And then we'll clean it up, paint it, and line the tank, and it'll be just super duper. Just like in any of the older Chevys, you can replace the sending unit separately. You can replace the pump separately. You can replace, yeah, all these parts separately. So it's not really a big deal to pop this stuff apart. They do make it so that it's not supposed to come apart anymore, which I don't know why they did that, but I guess it's cheaper for them to make, well, they might make more money if they just sell the whole module. But what I'm going to attempt to do, and I don't know if I can because it does look like they've done that, made it where it's more difficult, is I'm going to actually work at pulling apart this module. All of the wiring, all this stuff unclips. You don't want to force anything. Be gentle with it. And it all just plugs in, and yeah, should be good to go. I'm just going to pull the basket out of here and see, because the wiring and stuff, we can make it however we want. But I'm pretty sure this basket shouldn't fight us too hard coming out. So this is a sump. I guess it's a basket, it's a sump, whatever. So the bottom of this is definitely connected here. All I want to do is get this top out enough to find the retainers for this to see if I can possibly rotate this, which I really hope that I can. So it looks like there's retainers on these front two here, which hopefully just pop off. It looks like they might just pop off, maybe not. We'll give it a go. Thing is, I don't want to wreck anything. I don't want to have to buy parts twice. So 10 minutes and a box of Band-Aids later. No, I'm just kidding. So these definitely are not meant to come off the bottom of here, and that's what holds it into this. So what I did on this one is I actually took and I split one side. Now I've tried with a pick in here, which is probably going to end up sticking in my hand. I think I'm going to split them because they do actually snap back on. So what I have now is the sender is directly in line with the fuel line, so I can point this all the right direction. A little bit of modifying. I'm gonna pull the basket back out, clip these back on, and even though I don't know why you'd need to, but I'm gonna anyway. Yeah, there we go. So a little bit of a dilemma I had with myself. What I ran across is, well, first of all, the little zip ties I was gonna use, they won't fit into the spots where this goes into to be around here. So I said to myself, why don't I just take and put some snap rings on there, or some E-clips, I guess. And then I said, Self, you're not thinking. The reason we're doing this is we're modernizing it. Any metal that's inside this tank, and this tank is going to get lined, but any metal that's inside of here is going to be eaten with the new fuels. The ethanol just totally destroys all this metal. So what we're going to do is, and I already tested it, I put the one on. Once these are clipped on, I can't get it out of there. So I'm just going to clip this back on. I didn't totally destroy it. I fought with it, so I didn't destroy it. But they fit back on, and I don't have to put metal inside this tank then. Because, yeah, ethanol nowadays with our fuel that we're dealing with here, just garbage. I don't know if anyone's had to drain any of that or fix anything carb related with that in it. It's just garbage. I don't know. Yeah, it's great if we're going to be putting it to high horsepower supercharged applications. Yippee! I absolutely love it in that. But for day-to-day stuff, I don't know what we're thinking with trying to go with this newy fuely stuff that's just so nasty for everything. It's so corrosive. It just eats everything up. Make sure you get that all in nice. Just snaps in. Now our sending unit and this are in the same plane, and this is solid, will not pull up. I guess I'll catch you up on what I have going on. So what I did is I took a piece of plate, CNC plasmaed it out, and I have made a receiver that is going to get welded into the piece of flange that I did. So this started out as 1/2-inch plate, and I machined it down. I left a little tiny ridge here that's stepped so that it will drop in and I can do a TIG weld on this. And then this plate, I am threading the holes in, and I will clean this up. And this is a plate that has the matching holes that's going into here. And normally I power tap all these, but oops, I broke my power tap. We will be cutting the fuel tank, and then this module will be, we'll just pull this out of here for now. This module will be going through that hole, and this O-ring here is going to fit into this groove, and this has got a nice taper in it, so it squishes in the top ring. Instead of having the turning lock ring, I like the bolted flange. It will push it down really good, and I have some interference here for that O-ring, so when this goes together to be serviced, it's going to need to be lubed up, but this will be a very positive seal. The way the fuel tank's going to get cut, there's a very good chance that fuel will be right up to and over the top of where this goes, because this is going to be recessed in the tank. So that is where we're at. I'm just going to finish tapping the holes, and then I'll begin recording again when I get this closer, so I can have a better explanation for you. This is the fuel tank with this now is the top cut out. This corner here, it needs to get turned inside out. So if you look here, it's starting to be on this side. So not the prettiest, but literally a bunch of this corner is getting cut out. This is the actual level of where the new unit goes in. So if you see, it's knocked down quite a bit, and that way I have enough floor clearance for above this to the trunk, that there's clearance from the I don't know, we're going to call it the floor in the trunk, but it's a little higher. It's like a step up in the trunk. We're going to have an access hole in here, and then fuel lines are going to be running down this side, so I actually have to invert this as well. I'm not sure how it's going to work here, but if I can invert this so that the fuel lines can actually get routed into here, that would save a whole bunch of welding. And I have to shape material anyway, so I can do it with a hammer and dolly. And that's how I turned that dent inside out. And yeah. So this piece here, I'm gonna be building a plate once I know what size it is, CNC it out. But this will be going in to here, so for the sump. And I know the tank is kind of sitting, this tank sits at a 45 in the car, so we'll keep you up to date on it. So again, not the prettiest, doesn't matter. A lot of this is getting cut out. I can smooth this out a little bit more when it's cut out. The biggest thing, when I cut this out, this tank's gonna come down. Now, this tank originally was bowed. So these tanks should be flat, okay, to fit against the body. And so this side had a little bit of a bow in it, but I am gonna have to relieve it to make sure that this fits in the car properly. If I don't fix this, what's gonna happen in the car is it's not gonna fit against it properly where it's supposed to be. So me changing this, it had a tiny bow, but this really brought it up. So when I'm cutting all this out, I'm gonna have to pay special attention to make sure that I bring this back into shape. So I'm gonna make the piece that goes in here. I'll CNC that out. First, first what I'll do is I'll take this and I'll deal with making it so the hose has got somewhere to go. I'm gonna check for clearance in the car, that there's no problem here. I believe there isn't. There is a rib in the car here, so I'll have to make sure it's low enough in here, but I think we're really on track to making this tank work out really nice. So what I'm doing here right now is like I hammered this thing, just got nuts with it. So put lots of big dings in it. Now this material is crazy thin. It's 22 gauge. I'm going to be using 20 gauge to make the pieces, but all I want to do is make it reasonably smooth. So 80 grit on here really helps highlight the wounds that I have to deal with, which I think you can see there's quite a few in here. Got a little heavy-handed. This is the same dash 6 line that we're using on this, just a little piece of it. And what I've done is indented it in. There's going to be 2 lines. There's a feed and a return. So there's enough space in here. And I have actual clearance, complete clearance for these lines. There will be no touching the bottom of the floor with these, or no squishing. There will be probably touching and whatever, but yeah, this, for where it is, what's going on, the opening for the fuel tank is probably in the floor of the trunk is probably going to be, you know, this big, so it can be serviced easily. And but I actually, like, I'm not going to chase all these little wounds. I actually think this turned out really well. So I'm going to go and actually make a pocket for this. I'll CNC it out and fold it up. Probably going to put a bead roll in it and go from there. I'm fitting up the parts, making everything for the fuel tank, and I thought I'd do a little bit of a show and tell before this gets tacked in, closed up. So this is the part that's getting fit into the hole. I did a quick plasma cutout, and it's definitely, it's not in yet, whatever. I still have more cutting and fitting, as you can see. And I offset the hole to this side so I had more room for the fuel lines coming off. But this is going to be submerged in fuel. So this piece that I made, I have it where the, you know, the other piece that clamps down on top, and it's all nice and colored. And the reason it's colored is because I don't want my bolts to leak. So what I did is I just took my iron worker and I just punched out some little pieces of plate. I went quite heavy. It's a 10 gauge piece of plate, and I just poked them out and welded them on. And the reason I went that heavy is I can autogenous weld faster. So this now is going to get lined up and put in, and we'll be good to go. Pretty stoked the way it's turning out. I had to weld some stuff. I had to actually relieve more in here, and is what it is, but everything fits in here beautiful. Lots of clearance. This now is dead level. Beauty. The sump is just tacked in, as well as the patch where the original filler was is just, it's tacked in. Gonna get welded out, but I'm gonna put a drain right in this corner somewhere here because it's sitting like this. So I just want to have it accessible to get it off there. But I am not going to fully weld this out until I know for sure that everything is going to work in the car. I've tested the sump. I had to adjust the float a little bit to clear this step right here. Worked out perfect though. So I mean, it's just turning out. This is going to be a beautiful little tank. So, and it will look like it was meant to be, other than I don't like how square this is, but I can't justify going and making this thing look absolutely crazy. This is, if I were to do that, that's probably another 4 hours, and really it isn't going to need it. And this is hidden by the cross member anyway. Well, fuel tank is ready to go in. I have it lined, and the reason I line this fuel tank is because of the new fuel. This is a steel tank. I use the POR liner in this one, and so I have the bottom of this. So that's the sump where the pump and sender module fits in. And yeah, I put a drain in the bottom corner. This is where the old sender was. So I took and made a patch and welded that up. And she's ready to go in. So with the module, we'll take a look at that. So here's the module, and it just fits in. We're going to do more pictures inside under the hood or video so you can see it. And as you can see, I did a fuel tank repair on another unit, but I had to, the plan changed a little bit building this fuel tank, so I had to bend this arm around because it's on the other side of where I had planned to fit all the contours in the tank. The original module for the Chevy trucks has a sensor in it, and that sensor is for emissions. It's to see if there's any pressure in the tank. We're not worried about any of that. So you can just pull the sensor out, and then I just thread this hole and put a pipe plug in it. Pretty easy fix. So all I need to do, I have it sitting in here. I gotta tighten these all down nice and even, get it in, get it into the car. I threw this fitting on, and the reason I threw this on is for orientation of this, because I ground the tab off because I didn't want to deal with that tab, and hopefully this thing doesn't have to get changed a bunch, but I needed the clearance to make sure I had good clearance there. That's why that fitting is just sitting on there. Again, this being a Resto-Mod, you really want to make sure that you have all your modifications done before you take this to body. So I have this panel almost done. So this is a panel I made up that is going to get bolted in. So this was just a piece of 20 gauge I bent up, and of course I guess it's a little bit more than just bent up. It's a manufactured cover, but it fits on here, and there's a lot of clearance in here. When I was doing this, the only hiccup that I ran into was the very front of the gas tank. It has a seam on it, and these were very close to that seam, so I took and I bent that seam up. We'll look at it later, I'm sure we'll see it, because I'm still waiting for fittings for the bottom of the fuel tank, like the drain fitting, and I'm waiting for fittings for the vent. But and I like nutserts, so I threw nutserts in. These bolts are stainless bolts, and I'm using a Phillips screw head on these machine screws, and the reason is because it's old school, kind of having Phillips head, but all of this is getting covered with carpet, and I just wanted to keep this as tight and low profile as possible, and so it shouldn't show up through that carpet at all. This panel should be completely hidden. So all I have to finish is I have to tack these corners, make sure that it doesn't leak. I'm going to be putting a little thin foam underneath it so it's sealed, but that is the cover in place. I think it finishes it nicely under there. The tank is in, and the access hole I have cut in is going to work out great, and we have our supply line, our return line, and then this is a vent line. I ran the vent line down under the car. I still got to do the wiring for this. I'm going to have to get an adapter for the gauge, and then the vent line, I came up with an idea. What I did is I took a filter and modified it and put charcoal in it for the vent so that this car shouldn't stink when it's in a garage. And that's what happens with these old hot rods, is the tank warms up and the fuel gas is off. And then I made this little cover, which is going to go on. So we are ready to carry on. I'm going to leave that cover off for now. It's too bad we got to cover it. That looks pretty good. I'm really happy that you were able to join me on this fuel tank mod. Now, this is part of the Corvair project. I think it's pretty important that some of these projects that are sitting in garages that aren't getting worked on have a little bit of motivation, a little bit of help. And so if you can follow along, whether you're doing a Resto-Mod like this, or you're doing just a straight up restoration, this hopefully will help you with some steps on how to achieve that, and maybe some motivation to get back out to the garage shop, backyard, working under a tent. However it is that you're doing it, get it done. That would be extremely cool to see more hot rods out there. If you don't mind, please like, share, and subscribe. And as well, I'd love to hear your comments. So if you want to give me your opinion on something that I do, absolutely, please. I'm always open to learning, doing things differently. So thanks again. Have a great day and happy hot rodding.